Okay, my flap is now set aside and I have retrieved my 2 exterior front pocket pieces as well as my 2 lining pieces and the 2 pieces of foam that are required. I'm going to set this foam just over here to the side right now because we won't need this right away. And we're going to assemble our front pockets. So I'll just use one piece and give you the instructions on what you need to do. Set that up there. So this is your front pocket and or your back pocket. You will need to make sure that you have your center mark down here on the right side of the lower portion of this pocket. You're going to just take your lining piece and you're going to place the curved top portion along that top of the exterior, and then you're just going to clip that area together, making sure everything is nice and even and aligned along that side, just like that. You're going to do the same thing to this piece, right sides together, so the right side of the lining to the right side of the exterior, and you're going to place some clips along the top of this pocket, and then we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch along that top curve at 3/8 of an inch. You want to make sure you back stitch well. You're going to do that to both these pieces. So let's just head over to the sewing machine and do our stitching. Okay, my top stitching is all complete at the top of my 2 pockets. Now you want to trim away the excess because we're going to be flipping this to the other side, so you want it to be nice and smooth. So I'm trimming this back, leaving approximately 1/8 of an inch of seam allowance. I'll do this to both pieces. That I've trimmed both these pieces away on the seams. Now I'm just going to work with one piece right for now. So what you want to do is you want to take a ruler. This is just for additional kind of like a placement point for you to put your foam on. I'm going to set this ruler 1/2 inch in from the bottom on the wrong side of my lining side. I'm going to actually put a bit of weight here so that my ruler does not shift on me. This is my foam that I'm going to be applying to the wrong side piece. So what I'm going to do is I want to see exactly where it's going to fit center-wise. You want to make sure it's centered from the sides, and that bottom portion of your foam is aligned right along that edge of the ruler right there. Yes, you're going to be short up in here, which is exactly right, so don't panic on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel back the paper, get it with my nail there, and I'm just going to start with half of it, and I'm then going to place that lower portion of that foam. Before I push down too hard, I want to make sure that I'm nice and centered on there, just like that. I'll push on that area first, and then I'll peel off the rest and then mold it up and in place where it needs to be. I'm going to do the same thing to this piece right here. I'm going to lay my ruler down. It just helps to give you a nice firm edge to push that foam into. Peel off that foam. Now I'm going to flip this to the right side, just like that, and I'm going to do some top stitching. I want to push back. So in other words, let's look at the lining portion. I want to pull down on this lining so that I am actually exposing about 1/8 of an inch of my exterior front. I want to roll that exterior back a bit. So I start with the center and then I go along and I clip the side pieces, push that up, make sure that that seam is nice and perfect, and then I work the other side I put my finger in underneath here to push that seam up perfectly. So you want to see approximately 1/8 of an inch of your exterior rolling back to the wrong side, just like that. I'm going to do the same to the other piece, and then we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch this together, and you can use a 1/8 of an inch. I prefer a 1/4 of an inch because that way I make sure I catch my lining as well. The 1/8 of an inch will show some, you might hit into that area right in there, which is your seam, and it tends to push everything, and you might not get a consistent stitch. So my suggestion is 1/4 of an inch, back stitch well here, come all the way down around, back stitch over here. So now I'm going to just clip the other piece and head over to the sewing machine. Okay, I have now completed the top stitching on both of my pockets, as you can see, and that stitching at the back cleared well away from that fold line, so it didn't push my pressure foot out of the way. The next thing you're going to need is, you notice you're going to have a little extra on your lining hanging from the bottom of your pocket. I'm just going to turn it this way so I can trim off that excess. I'm going to put a clip here and a clip here so that it doesn't shift on me. Now you can align a ruler here if you wish, or you can use a pair of scissors, but you basically just need to remove that excess lining at the bottom, just like that, so that you are nice and even and in place. You can actually stick a clip there if you wish. I'm going to leave these two on the side. You're going to do the same thing with this piece, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to retrieve my upper back exterior as well as my lower back outside pocket lining, and we're then going to assemble the back section of this purse. So in front of me I have now my upper back exterior with the curve to the top. I have my lower back outside pocket lining. We need to attach these two pieces together so that we can place our pocket on top, just like that. So I've just kept one pocket to the side, and then I've put the other one over for when it's time to do the front portion with the flap. Now, if you align these pieces up just like I have them, you make it much easier so that you don't stitch the wrong side together. You can see the exterior has that curve at the top, angles down this way a little bit, and the lining piece does the same thing. It angles down, so the width at the base is about 1/2 inch wider than this portion right here. So you're going to flip the right sides together, just like that. You want to align your center mark, place a clip there, and then clip down a few clips. Well, that's all you really need. We're going to be stitching these two pieces together. So we're going to be going across that clipped area at 3/8 of an inch, making sure you back stitch well. Now, while I'm at the machine, this is what it's going to end up looking like. I'm going to be tucking that back portion back down so that the exterior is facing down on that seam, and I'm also going to do my top stitching across my lining while I'm over at the sewing machine. So let's go over to the sewing machine and we'll do that stitching, and you can see what I'm going to do. So as you can see, I've now stitched these two pieces together just like that, and while I'm here at the machine, I'm going to do my top stitching as well. So I'm going to open up so that I'm exposing the right side of this section, and I'm going to kind of put that lining portion down and underneath. So it's further, the exterior portion is down that way and it folds over. I'm just going to add a clip right there to that end, and I'm just going to finger press all the way along so that that exterior portion is facing down and the lining is fold it around, and I'm going to top stitch across that lining portion at approximately 1/8 of an inch from that seam. I'm just going to kind of pull these as I go. Now, if you wish to go back to your table and really press or add a bit of glue to the back side underneath here, then go right ahead. But I generally like to do it while I'm at the machine. It's just quick and fast. So I'm going to give myself a longer thread here, and I'm going to begin my top stitching at 1/8 of an inch from this seam I just made. So this is my piece all ready to go. I have connected these two pieces together, and I have top stitched across that lining just as I showed you at the machine. Now, our stitching can be inconsistent at times, and I have allowed a little bit extra just in case. So what you need to do is you need to take your pattern piece I, which is your other lining piece, and you need to, now you can also use the actual pattern piece I if you wish. I generally like to, here I'll do it, no, I guess I have to see it this way. I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to place the right sides together, and I'm just going to put a clip up at the top. I want to align my top edge. As you can see, you have excess down here as well that you need to trim off. I like to leave a little bit extra on my patterns because I like everything to be nice and squared up and perfect. Not always do we have the most consistent stitching when we're stitching, and sometimes you may end up coming back to a machine the next day and do it a little bit different. So basically, I like to take this pattern piece I, place it on top of the right side, and trim away any excess that might be hanging from what you just did. Now, if you make sure that your center mark right here extends up a little bit higher, because you're going to be cutting that off. So you're probably going to be removing about 1/4 of an inch, anywhere from 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, depending on your seam. So you want to get rid of that piece, and now you unclip this, and you're going to set this piece aside until we're ready to do the front pocket area. So now this piece is all ready to go, and we're going to take our finished top pocket, or in this case it's the back pocket. We're going to align the bottom. I'll turn it this way because it's easier for me to clip in place. You're going to align your centers right there, clip that here and here, making sure that your bottom edge is even. You want to do your sides like this. And before you go to the machine and base stitch this together, you want to make sure that the distance between this top pocket here is equal to the distance here, because you want to keep everything nice and straight. So I generally will take a ruler at this point, place that at that tip, and take a look and see exactly where I am to make sure that everything is nice and even, which it is. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the machine once again, and I'm going to base stitch this back pocket onto this finished area right here. So you can see there's your lining in there. I'm going to go down this side, across the bottom, and back up the other side. I'm just going to stitch approximately 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch, probably 1/4 of an inch, and that way I'll catch everything. And back stitch here at the top to make sure nothing comes undone. We're just basting these two pieces together. And then what we're going to do after this is we're going to work on the front section. So now I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to base stitch this together. And when we come back, I'm going to show you what it looks like, and we'll continue with the front pocket assembly portion. So my stitching is all completed. I have attached my pocket to that back area, just like that, secured everything in place. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to retrieve pattern piece I lining, as well as the other prepared front pocket, and my flap, and then we'll assemble that front section so you can set this piece aside until we need it when we're adding our base and everything together. So now I've retrieved the flap that I have completed, the other piece of my pocket, as well as my lining piece, which is pattern piece I, that has the heavyweight fusible interfacing placed on top of it. So I'll just put the flap right here for a minute. And again, you want to align your center marks at the bottom. So you're putting your pocket on exactly like you did the other piece. You want to make sure that everything is nicely aligned at the bottom, just like that. And I'm going to add a clip to the side and to the side. And once again, you want to make sure that you are even up along this area right here. So I'm just going to quickly take my ruler and make him see my measurement and make sure that everything is nice and level, going from this point down to here. So that's all ready to go. We're not going to stitch it at all at this point. We're now going to take our flap. I'm just going to set this over here a little bit because we need to get everything set up for our flap. You have your exterior and your lining. When you place your piping in, it tends to pull this whole portion back up, which shortens that lining a little bit, just like that. We need to bring that up as level as we possibly can. So I'm going to pull down my exterior, just like that. I'm going to align that top folded edge with my lining. You want to keep everything as even up at the top as possible. It's very, very important. So I'm just pulling that back a little bit, and I'm putting a fair amount of clips on there. I will be removing them again, but I want to make sure nothing is going to shift. So what I have done is I've made sure that the lining and the exterior at the top are nice and even. Now you're going to place your flap on top, just like this. You're going to align the top curve of the flap with the top curve of your lining. So you want to start with center, like that. And if you have to adjust it a little this way, because your center may not be exact, then do so. But you want to make sure that this side area is nicely aligned. Put the next clip, and then the next clip. This piping should fit just either right on top or just a little bit above from that pocket area right there. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put a clip right on top of that area. So I want to secure that well, same as over here. I'm going to make sure everything is nice and perfectly aligned. I'm going to make sure that clip is nice and tight. Matter of fact, I'm going to add a little longer clip right here below that to make sure nothing shifts on me, just like that. Now, everything is set in place, properly done. I'm going to remove these clips at the top, like that, half of them, and then I'm going to pull my exterior back. So I'm seeing the wrong side of my exterior and the wrong side of the inside of my flap. And then I'm going to reclip the lining portion to this lining portion. So I'm not clipping my exterior. I want to make sure it's well clipped. Undo this one, just replace, just like this. Like this. So this is not clipped together, but the lining portion of my flap is clipped to that lining portion. You remember that 1-inch line you drew on your lining? Well, now is the time we're going to be utilizing that. So I'm just kind of pulling this back a little bit, not to bend the foam or anything, but just to kind of get it out of the way so that I can place a few pins through the two lining pieces. So the lining of the flap and the lining of pattern piece I, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch right on top of that line, back stitching well, going right across that area and back stitching well. Now, if you need to place an additional pin. If you're worried about the shifting, you can actually place a pin down here and down here so that nothing actually is going to move at all. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're just going to secure those two pieces together, and then we're going to trim it off. Okay, I'm back from the sewing machine and I have stitched across that line right up there. I'm going to remove my pins now. I don't need them in there. And I'm going to unclip that top area right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim back the excess that I have just stitched. So I want to take from that stitch line over, I want to remove most of this area right here. So I'm just going to trim this back. I'll probably leave about 3/16 of an inch, a little bit more than 1/8. So I've now trimmed that back. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to redraw that 1-inch line that's behind there so you have something to follow. But what I like to do is I like to place, before I do that, a little bit of glue between this area right here and my foam, just like that, to secure everything in place before I draw that line again. So I need to replace that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unclip right here at the sides, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to mark that 1 inch once again right here, which technically is your stitch line, or just around that stitch line right there. And then I'm going to grab that pattern piece again, and I'm going to just follow along that area, which really is your stitch line. But if you find that you have maybe gone a little off somehow, then at least you have that line, that drawn line to follow. It is also important that you actually glue that together. So if your fabric glue is not going to hold, then I would recommend just putting a light layer of rubber cement here and a very, very light layer of rubber cement on here. But I've used fabric glue, so basically it's going to stick, but I'm going to add a couple of clips along that top to make sure it is well adhered and in place. Now, if you have used the magnetic snap on here, we'll just say that it's on there, then you need to transfer the other half to the front of your pocket. So what you need to do is you need to press down like this on the magnetic snap so that you have an indentation right here, a little circle, and then take your washer mark and undo your bottom like this, and go in and place the other side of that magnetic snap in place. So you're going through the foam as well. And then you go back to your sewing machine and you re-stitch everything, all securing your pocket. But you need this pocket empty first before you place that magnetic snap. Once that's on, then you can base stitch and secure everything together. I am going to be adding the plaid tongue lock. So I'm just going to get everything together so that I can show you how I do the markings for that plaid tongue lock. And that again is from Greenberry Hardware. You can use any lock you wish if you want. You can even do a hole here and just do a flip lock or something, a turn lock. That's totally up to you, but you really do need to know the markings that you will require for that. I am only showing a magnetic snap lock in this pattern as well as the plaid lock. So let me go and clear everything out of here, and I'll get that lock and I'll show you how I place that on this front of this bag. Okay, I have brought over my plaid lock from Greenberry Hardware, and I'm going to apply this lock to the front of my Ruby Satchel bag. Pardon me. This is the piece I'm going to need. So what you're going to have is a piece like this, which is a tongue portion, and then the piece the tongue portion goes into, as well as two, I guess back, we'll call them washers, and 3 screws. So I'm just going to take this piece and set it up aside, and we're going to work with this piece because we're going to place this into position, but we need to make our marks on center. So what you want to do is you want to just put a little mark right there, and then you're going to take your lock and you're going to just turn it so that you see the wrong side. So there's the 3 screw marks. This screw in the center is center. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place that there to give me a guide as to where my sides of my lock are. So I'm just going to place a little mark there and a little mark there on either side of that lock. So I know where my center is. I'm going to flip this back in place and I'm going to work this piece on to my flap. Now, if you're finding that it's very tight, then you may want to do a little bit of hammering in this area, just like that. And now I'm going to take and place the screws into place to secure that portion of the lock. So I'm just going to grab my screwdriver and I'm going to screw in those areas. I'm going to flip this whole piece back like this, making sure that anything underneath my lock is not going to scratch. Make sure I'm even and straight before I place my screws in. I'm going to begin with my center screw. Make sure that's well pushed in, and then I will work the other 2 side screws as I go along. Now you may wish to put some Loctite into these holes, and I probably will before I am finished. So I just want to make sure everything's set in place, just like that. Push hard down on there. I'm not going to push too hard because I am going to remove those screws back out again, and I'm going to put some Loctite in there. But in the meantime, I just want to get this secured and in place, just like that. Make sure that whatever you place it on, it's not going to scratch. So this is what this piece should look like right now. It's all ready to go. This portion right here, you need to slip onto here to get your markings. But what you need to do is you need to bend your prongs so that they are straight and parallel up. Bent there, just like that. Work this side. You need them to be as straight as possible, just like that. And then I'm going to slide the tongue lock into position like that. And like you did, I showed you how to do with the magnetic snap, you need to put a bit of pressure on here to get your indentations of where you need to place your holes. So I'm just going to gently push onto here. If you push too hard, you could bend your prongs. So I'm just going to do a little bit of pressure right here so I can get my marks. Quickly lift that up so I can see where those marks are, and take and, oh, I can't see that one, so I'm just going to push again on that. So I now have my 4 marks that I need to put a hole there so that I can place those prongs through there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this. And before I connect everything, I am going to remove those screws here at the top, and I'm going to put Loctite in those screw holes and secure them properly. So I'm going to do that before I show you how to put the bottom portion on. Okay, I have secured my screws in place with some Loctite, and I've also added a piece of film on top of this portion of my plaid lock so that it doesn't scratch, so that it will protect it. So now what you need to do is you need to cut those 4 holes so that you can place this portion of your tongue lock into position. So I'm just going to flip this back a little bit so that it exposes this pocket. You need to unclip the side, but keep this portion clipped, the lining clipped to the lining. So you want to lift that area which is between your pocket. So you should see the foam as well as your lining portion. Now, when I make my holes, I generally use a pair of broken scissors that I have just to make the size of holes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this back again. There's nothing under here, as you can see, and I just like to place that portion in there and make my hole. You can't really see that, but I'm kind of going through here, so I'm making this hole. I'll maybe flip it this way. And I usually put the point of that at the bottom, make sure there's nothing under there, and then I kind of pull up that area so that I make that slit, same as here. Now you can actually use a what do you call it, a seam ripper. I don't like to do that because I find that you could take a little bit too much, so I just do this way. You can also get a really nice chisel punch that you can punch that down into position. So I'm going to leave that back. Actually, I'll bring it this way and flip this back here so it's easier for you to see. So then I'm going to take my lower portion of my tongue lock and I'm going to insert those prongs in there, making sure I have it the right way. So test and go, oh, no, I'm upside down. So you need to turn that around before you put your washers to the back. Make sure it's all right. Everything's perfect. Undo that. And then you're going to flip this over and you're going to move that out of the way. Actually, I'll just secure this up here so that it's not folding down. And then you're going to place your washers on top of those prongs, just like that. And I bend my prongs into the center, so I'm pushing a little more pressure, not too hard, to bend my front portion. And then I'm going to bring this around like this, add the washer to the back, push that like that and like that. And then generally what I do is I place a piece of either, I glue some leather on top of those prongs to secure them. In this case, I've got a thin piece of peel and stick, like a suede kind of foam, and I'm just going to place that on top like that to secure. You could actually tape that if you wish, just to make sure that it's covered and it's not going to penetrate through your lining portion. So let me just undo that now and bring that back around, and I'm going to re-clip my side once again, and I'm going to re-clip my bottom as well so that all the pieces are back together. And then I will go to the sewing machine and I will base stitch the sides and the bottom and the other side together so that everything is complete. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to section number 3, which will be assembling the front and back to our sides and our base, getting ready to complete the exterior of your bag. So this is how the front pocket looks, and this is how the back pocket looks. So let's head on to section number 3 and get more finished on this bag.